Hello, and welcome to Power Reflections, a proud member of the Duff Network, where we reflect on Marbo's most righteous work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And we're coming at you live in the Discord. Wait, what?
Okay. We're on Twitch today. This is our all packed up 1.5 little tech test, I guess.
No, it's a very exciting stream that's going to have a lot of horrific segments.
That's true.
Yeah, we got a fun 3 hours in store for you all today. If you're just listening to this on the regular feed, you'll probably be able to go to the Duff Media YouTube to catch up on what you missed.
Hopefully,
I would expect. Yes. But if you are just listening to this on the regular feed, you should really subscribe to the Twitter or join the Discord or follow Duff Media on Twitch so that you get notified when we do fun stuff like this. Because yes, as Azizad did it says in chat, it's a very special episode, and you don't want to miss this.
So I guess with that said, should we get into the chapters? We've got two interludes.
Speaking of very special episodes, it's a double interlude chapter, and it's funny. It really is kind of perfect sometimes, and it makes me think that Wildbow bases his chapter schedule around our recording schedule sometimes.
It's definitely not true.
But I mean, because the fact that these two chapters, it always seems to happen that two chapters that work so well together, come out in the time that we would do an episode.
Yeah, I do wonder though,
confirmation bias.
How much? Yeah, that's just all the chapters work like that. They just feel because they're the two. Like if we suddenly switched half a week away, it might still feel like that.
Well, Buzz denying it, but I get what he sees. There's a bit of a wink in that chat. Okay. But you know what I mean? Like these two chapters they really do work together so perfectly, because like the vibe of both of these chapters to me reading them was like, oh, here's a practitioner, oh wait, they might be a good one, do you think by the end there's a chance? Oh no.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that a lot, but it's this very interesting, like arc 17 really came out of the gate, and 17.1 and 17.2 being like, where do you draw the line, who are you willing to work with, what can we forgive, what can be redeemed?
Yeah.
And that was our discussion question this week too. And these chapters really came out the gate and sort of showed us why you should draw that line. Because these are two women who didn't, and we'll get into it.
I guess at the end we'll kind of review the chapters a little bit, because it's definitely true that these two are very much continuing that theme, and it's making me wonder, like, well, I'm just going to ask you this question now, Elliot. What do you think of these two? Do you think they will ever come to the right side?
It's a good question. I mean, it doesn't seem like it at the moment. Or it'll be that thing where if they do, it will be late enough that it feels a little bit hollow.
Yeah.
Like if Muscle's already on the downturn and you switch sides, it's like, that's better than being a diehard fan, but, it's like, it sullies it a little bit that they waited till then. Yeah,
exactly. I want to just, in this part of the show where we just high level talk about the chapters as well, I do just want to call out how terrible of a joke Angie Demarest is. Like, because one of the other things that makes these two chapters work so well together is we meet these characters, and then about halfway through the second chapter, we get Muss's explanation of who they are, and it really kind of contextualizes all of what we've been seeing, and we kind of start to see who they are more and more. Angie, we see really who she is at the very end of the second chapter. Yeah. We see like her backstory, I guess. And so this whole chapter and the first half of the next chapter, everyone's just shitting constantly on Angie. And it's justified because she's so annoying.
She's really annoying.
Yeah. But then at the end, we find out, like, basically that her practitioner ability is she was abused by her father. And because of that, like, if people abuse her, horrible shit happens, basically. And it's just like the most like gut twisting knife of a resolution to why this character is so annoying.
Well, because you spend the whole two chapters just hating her, because it's like, oh, this girl's
she's
the worst.
So terrible.
And then you see why she's like that, and you'd be like, well, you would be like, like she's so petty and like constantly projecting her insecurities onto everyone around her because of how she grew up. Like,
I like that Sweet Manzana says in chat, she was going to kidnap Logan Paul, which is effectively what she was planning on doing by giving a love potion to, what was it, like Donkey Dude Doug or something?
It was like, Doug Dog Boy or something.
Yeah, anyway. But yeah, and the thing that's great about Angie is like in a chapter that's about practitioners making to us or is the wrong choice. Angie is a great marker of an extreme of that, right? Like you look at Angie and you think, well, she is who she is because of the fucked up situation that she was in. But that is just
All of them.
practitioners
Yeah.
to an
Yeah.
extent, right? So I love Angie as like a marker of like, society is really the problem here.
Yeah, because I suppose that's the thing. Like, I have to keep reminding myself, Elizabeth and Eloise and stuff, they're like 18
Yeah, yeah.
tops. So it is a bit like, that's definitely within that realm, like we saw a lot with Reed, where
Yeah, very
them,
under the thumb of their family still. It's hard to.
yeah, exactly. Like, when you're in your mid 30s or something, making decisions like these two made, it's a lot less
Mm,
sort of forgivable than somebody who's still kind of finding themselves and growing up.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Um, yeah, it's a lot of troubling characters. Should we high level chat about Milo as well, who is like, charming sociopath vibes?
Yeah, I kind of went the other way. He came across because he was compared to the Hennigers early on. I
Mm.
expected him to just be like an aggressive asshole, and then he just turns out to be like the cold and calculated kind.
Yeah, yeah, but the first half of this first chapter, he's nice, he's fun, you
Yeah,
like get along with him
relatively.
well.
Yeah,
And then you find out he just goes around murdering programmers for fun.
yeah.
Watch your back, Elliot.
um, yeah. I mean that's something I think. Yeah, the chapter does really well. Is because it does it with Elizabeth too. Like and we saw the same thing. I think it was in Basil's one in 14.z and with Millie's. This is becoming a recurring theme in these practitioner interludes.
Mhm.
Is it opens it up and they seem kind of nice and cool and they say and do things like the first thing Elizabeth does here is say, "Hey, don't do love potions. That's terrible."
Mm.
And it's hard not to be on her side with that. So you sort of instinctively start to, I think, like her a bit.
Yeah,
And that's set a low bar, but practitioners.
yeah,
And then it's like as things go more and more in, you're like, oh, please stop, like stop
yeah,
doing this. And
yeah.
Basil, Millie, now both Eloise and Elizabeth, it's just becoming this recurring theme of seeing like the good in them, but then also just how they keep making these mistakes that kind of devalues that goodness.
Yeah. And I think I mean, I don't remember the specifics of each of the situations, but looking at this chapter, like the thing that causes Lizzie to back down, I think is just structural stuff, right? And same as
Yeah.
Eloise, like it's just the structures are built to support the way that things are
Yeah.
sliding
Yeah.
continuously, and it's it is hard to move against that. Um, yeah,
I mean, I guess like to dive into Elizabeth more specifically, she is so entrenched in this practitioner point of view. Like we're gonna talk about this a lot, I think, as she goes through it. But because she seems actually quite good at heart, like she's the
mm,
one who brings up the comparisons to the blue heron thing. Like she seems to want to do good, but she clearly doesn't see others as people, and
yes,
like it's always that's like the one thing. If we could get her to see others as people, I feel like you could completely turn her around.
yeah.
Because all of the stuff I want to complain about with Elizabeth essentially comes down to the fact that she treats humans and others
Yeah,
differently.
one has merit and one
Yeah.
is monsters.
Well, like the way she talks about inter-practitioner war, like the BHI, you almost like get on side with her, and then she starts to say things like, well, there's the one part where I think she mentions that like, oh, the Kennetiers didn't even need the Hungry Choir rituals power; they didn't even use it. I
Mm.
was like, Kennett really needed it when that happened. Like that, they were desperate, and they were like, "This isn't enough." But she's just not even thinking of that because it was like the practitioners didn't take it.
Yeah,
And then obviously there's the whole conversation with Matthew, like later on, where she's like, saying, "Oh, you're not really an other anymore.
yeah.
Like you don't need to worry about that sort of stuff." It's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
Elizabeth, you're so close."
it's her justifying like, oh no, I'm able to have a normal conversation with you,
Yeah,
and therefore you're not another.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it
exactly.
really hurts to read.
But like, yeah, it's just because the rest of her is, I think, already there. Like it's literally, I think this is just like the one thing, and that
Yeah,
makes it so
yeah,
much more painful because it's not like you need to completely reassemble their worldview like Reed. It's just the one, and it's like that
yeah.
hurts because it's closer.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, that is really a strength of Kennet is they've collected an amalgamation of others who are, you know, I think relatively
Well, yeah,
human. I don't know what word to use, but like
well,
that
yeah,
they're a group that is a great group for people to meet and get to know, and then
yeah.
from there. realize, okay,
Yeah, well, that was sort of what came up with the Millie interlude, where like she hated all goblins because she'd had like
yes,
some bad things and then
yes,
written off all goblins. Whereas Kenneth is very much sort of taking like the good goblins and empowering them.
yeah,
Um, then they've also got people like Sig, who's just like a cigarette. Like,
yeah.
so they got the sort of the full gamut, but they're all quote unquote good.
Yeah, or again, like you're right. The word isn't even good. It's like given the opportunity to
Yeah,
be good.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like given the
trying.
opportunity not to have to be constantly in a war for their own survival. Even though I mean, Ken it kind of is anyway.
Hasn't really worked out since the story
Yeah,
started.
yeah.
No.
Um, but yeah, so Lizzie notices these two others coming by the diner where they're hanging out, and she sees how massive they are, and they don't seem to notice our heroes here, but they are still incredibly dangerous, regardless.
Oh yeah, it's so tense because the
Yeah,
the Turtle Queen's just terrifying.
the Turtle Queen
Like
is fucking horrifying. Yeah,
whether we're seeing from enemy perspectives or even ally perspectives, like the other thing she does here is kind of accidentally maybe start to take over Soot Sleeves as things. Like it's just she's just really scary.
yeah. She is very like toxic in a tangible way, in
Yeah,
the way of like in the same way that Gilkey was like of infecting the
yeah.
things around them. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
I mean, uh, do we trust the Turtle Queen?
No, 100% not.
I'm asking out of the chat too. I'm interested to hear what everyone thinks because I can't bring myself to trust her, but I wonder if that's the trap
Mm,
because we saw in her head in Millie's in 16.z, and I actually went and reread that, and she kind of seems on board with Rook,
yes, 100%.
but then also 100% on board with Rook isn't necessarily ideal either. Um, I don't know. Like I'm at this point, I'm still a little unsure how much to chalk it up to. Just like there's clearly an aspect to her taking over stuff that is out of her control,
Mm,
but I worry about how much she's willing to fight that instinct too. It reminds me of Liz. Like she
mm,
actually sits in a very similar spot to Liz in my head, where like Liz grew up in that really angry private school environment
mhm.
and is still clearly carrying that with her, and that's like what's causing her to choose Charles' side and all this dumb shit. The Turtle Queen like came about in this violent slap based culture,
Mm,
and I just worry how much she's been able to leave that behind. I guess.
mm. Yeah. To me, it's like the thing that would make me trust her more is if we took away her passive. Like, this is what Rook was talking about, right? Was like changing her somewhat to make it so that she wasn't
Yeah,
automatically spreading out as much. And she did seem somewhat interested in pursuing, at least discussing that a bit further. So, and again, it was, think about this or else from Rook, but still.
yeah, exactly. I can't make up. I want to trust the Turtle Queen, but I can't bring
Yeah.
myself to do it.
I like what a bird on a motorcycle said in chat, saying, on an IRL equivalent level, she's kind of like a celebrity with a major control problem, which I think tracks to me. Like has
Yeah,
has a lot of influence and has some kind of addiction or something like
yeah,
that, and it
yeah.
it really the chance at relapse feels very strong, especially when she's continuously being put in positions where she's effectively being asked to relapse intentionally, right? Like,
Yeah, it just I can't help but feel that like working with her is playing with fire, and I know that that's what the practitioners say in these chapters. So I don't want to be thinking like that but yeah, she's I this is what I'm enjoying the most about the Turtle Queen at this point is this whole idea. I don't feel like we can trust her, but also if we're not giving her that opportunity,
mm,
like how is Canada any better? Uh,
yeah. I mean, apart from the pure fact of what she is, she hasn't really done anything to make us not trust her, right?
No, that's the thing. It's just inherent to her nature that I don't
Exactly.
trust her, and the fact that when we saw in her head, she wasn't like adamantly, "Oh, I'd love to join Rook's side and not have to be like this anymore."
Mm,
She's just sort of like, "Oh yeah, I'll listen,"
mm.
and I was like, that wasn't committal enough to get me
Yes,
on
exactly,
side. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, I also can we talk about how like Schatzmugel is the big counter that the practitioners have to the Turtle Queen for these next two chapters because the idea of her subsuming him is so awful to her that she doesn't want to do it. Like, it's a great way to start hyping up Schatzmugel as just like
Yeah.
weird and terrifying.
Yeah, no, Sharts is a real champion of the next chapter, isn't he?
Yeah,
Such a fun character.
but yeah, just the idea that the Turtle Queen is someone who has just sort of been taking over everything we see. The only thing that's really counted her at this point is like Soot Sleeves, who gets compared to gods a lot in this chapter. So like you need this like intense claim, and the Schatzmoogle's just like he tastes so bad. She doesn't want anything to do with it. Like that, you just like it, when you're reading this for the first time at this point, you still don't quite understand Schatzmoogle, and you're just looking at it. I was just like, what is this dude?
Yeah, it's wild. My tallest has just put an idea in chat. I just want to make sure you see that so we can take a note to do it for
That would
the
be
real
funny.
live stream.
Just if we did a little bit each time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be good. Um, so yeah, Lizzie speaks to her dad to kind of hash out the mission and argue the morality a bit of it. And this to me was a scene of like giving
Mm.
us an example. Okay, wait, is Lizzie actually going to be good?
Yeah.
But rereading it my second time, it's almost like it almost feels like she's playing devil's advocate to an extent of like paying lip service to these ideas, but not actually
Mm.
going far enough with them to convince her, even herself.
Yeah, it's she. Yeah, you're right. She brings it up, but she's not yet the sort of person who's willing to commit either way. Like her and her dad almost play this game of chicken about who's going to make the decision. Where she keeps saying, "Oh, I don't really know if we should do this because X, Y, Z," and he's like, "I think we should do it, I guess, but I'll leave it up to you." And she's like, "Oh, you're the head of the family. I'll let you
Yeah.
decide. I trust you." Like, I think she knows what the right decision is morally,
Yes.
but she's not ready to make it, so she kind of defers to her dad.
Yeah, she doesn't want to assume the responsibility for it,
Yeah.
really, I think. Yeah, which is, I mean, disappointing, right? Like, yeah, she tries to get out of having to make the tough call, and in the end she just kind of avoids it.
Yeah, but she doesn't end up making it.
Yeah.
I love how the conversation starts with her saying, "Father, it's Elizabeth," which is just very like there is, especially by practitioner family standards, genuine love between these two.
Yes,
I get
yes.
like they're relatively close, but that really establishes how like businessy the call is, and kind of to an extent the relationship that we see in here is like there's something there, but also it's very formal for a call to your dad.
Yeah, it's that classic practitioner thing of I feel like practitioners lean into like Victorian era stereotypes just to give themselves a bit more favor with others. So I think that's what they're doing here.
True, true.
Um, yeah. The other thing that I really like about this is between this scene and the previous scene is the like they don't actually seem to have a good picture of what's going on in Kennet, which is really funny,
Yeah.
And it made me think like because I know Mussa, I'm sure has a pretty good idea. I'm sure
Mm.
Bristow and Alexander both had good ideas, and yes, Alexander swore some things, but like it really stood out to me this is such a big downside of practitioner society and how it's structured versus the way the Kenneteers have been operating, which is much more around like sharing information and collaboration,
Yeah.
especially from Avery's side. And here we see that they really don't even know like the basics about the Kenneteers.
Yeah, why have they been sent? Because these guys were already here doing like a lap of this area, checking in on stuff.
Mm.
Why were they sent here to check up on this stuff? And like
And
most
Mussa
of them have
didn't
never
give them
heard of
any info.
Yeah, it's
Like
bad info
because Mussa
management.
knows Mussa was here. Mussa didn't swear any
Yeah.
oaths to not tell anybody.
And like when this first came up, my instinct, like when I first read this, was that Mussa had just underestimated Kennet. Because if you think about it, he left Kennet in like an absolute trash heap.
Yeah.
And I could forgive him for thinking Charles was the only threat in Kennet because the rest of them had been broken.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, have they like totally underestimated the rest of Kennet and they don't realize how great they are? And it was like, no, actually, I think Mussa does have a pretty good picture of what the rest of Kennet looks like. He just wasn't sharing it.
Yeah, which is just so dumb. It's just clearly so dumb. I wonder if it's Mussa trying to prevent, because that's the other thing. Lizzie and Eloise are both kind of potentially able to be won over to the other side. Do you think Mussa thinks that the more info he shares, because like surely he can do some propaganda and start spreading the seeds?
I just think it's not a priority yet, like because they are kind of saving it for last because Charles is there. Like I think it's very much he just hasn't bothered. Basically, I just think it's like not laziness, but yeah, like it's just not a priority for him.
It's so dumb. Mussa is just so. I mean, this is what we heard about back in the bug interlude, right? Like the Basil creatures interlude was just how actually Massa is not a good
Leader.
strategist
Yeah.
slash leader. And this is just a perfect example. Like if I 100% if they were equipped with more information, it would
Mhm.
be they would have gone. It goes okay, but
Yeah.
there are clear points where if they had known a bit more, it would have been so much easier for them.
I'll push back on you saying that he's a bad strategist, though, because I think
Sure,
he's actually a genius. It's just he is intentionally building a structure where he is clearly on top.
sure.
And I think this is like a side effect of that.
Right, right.
Like
Yeah.
him only giving people information when they need it and having like it centralized with him is an important way he stays as the center and on top.
Mm,
So it's that way that's probably from his side the tactical part of it is
mm,
he's not really sharing that info around because they don't need it yet.
yeah. A bad decision, clearly.
Yeah. I also just really enjoy getting the like Kennet hype highlights that
Yes,
we got
yes.
here. Like it was very fun, just sort of remembering some of these events that are a very long time ago in the story, and seeing what Kennet looks like to outside practitioners who are all a bit like, are these guys crazy? Like,
Yeah.
are they
It's
arsonists or
so good
somebody's
every
matchbook?
time.
And I was like, oh, a little of both, honestly.
Yeah.
Like,
This one moment really stood out to me in the next chapter where Sin finally opens her violence eye
yeah,
and turns it on Verona, and Verona draws a line of chalk to
yeah,
protect it.
yeah.
And I'm like,
Sin's a bit like, what the fuck?
yeah, like
Like,
Sin has been hyped up so much and is clearly very powerful.
yeah.
And Verona just draws a line in chalk, and you can see for a moment they're like, hold on, how powerful are these people?
Yeah, well, Sin's like, is she just going to be able to keep doing that? And
And she does.
yeah,
It's fucking hilarious.
Liz is a bit like, I mean, it might weaken their well, but like, don't commit to
I
this.
love Kenneth. So good. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful stuff.
Um. Yeah. I guess. Sorry. Jumping back to Muss's like
Mm,
leadership. The other really toxic thing that feeds into his strategy, but I just hate, is his whole everyone's clearly aware that they're being tested at all times. Like, there's no like, when we go to Kennet, people are doing stuff for themselves and they want to do things. Everyone here is kind of terrified of disappointing Mussa and being left off the train.
yes.
Like, there's no there's none of that communal rising up. It's like, work with these people because it's a test to see whether you can work with them. And we'll probably talk about that even more in Eloise's one because it ties back to her family a lot. But it just hurts to see how all of these people are kind of working together, not really because they're friends, but just
Mm,
because they're terrified of what happens if they fail.
mm. Yeah, they're working for a shot at some, half hinted at promotion.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's like they're second guessing everything they do because one mistake, like hesitating to kill someone or something, might reflect badly on them. Like, basically, Mus just turned everyone into little reeds.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And it's not, I mean, we saw what happened with Reed. I don't think it's
No,
especially
it's just
sustainable.
no, it's a shit system.
Yeah.
It produces musses. Like,
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, this group ships out to Kennet, and Lizzie starts to get a bit of a read on it. Eloise Mraz shows up as well to help.
and I love how scientific Liz's like measurements of the town are. Like, obviously, she has a cool magic coin that flips her to the underside and
Mm,
shit like that. But the bit where she's like pulling out spreadsheets and doing measurements, it was just it like, I love how different that feels to so many other
yeah,
practices. Like, all these practices feel unique. Like, I've never, even Zed doesn't pull out spreadsheets, right?
yeah.
Like, hers is more fucking accountanty than like Zed's.
Yeah, it is very fun, the vibe of all these different practices.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do really like it. I also like this part of the chapter. Liz is basically just talking about how messed up Kenneth is, and it's just really
Yeah.
like, oh, this would be doing really poorly on a good day. Oh, and it's not even a good day. Like, it's really fucked up, and it's like so good.
Yeah, it's like the
Love
other
it.
half to like how crazy involved Kennett's been is then they get there and they're like, what is this place? Like, there's an undercity, it's a mess. They've got all these shrines, and I can't figure out why they made shrines like this.
Yeah,
And of course, like Sin kind of gets close to explaining it, but like they just can't fathom that what the Kenneteers did is like found neat spirits and then just built them shrines.
yeah,
Like, because it's just such a weird way to work for
yeah,
practitioners. Yeah.
yeah. It's incomprehensible.
Um, Oh yeah. So one thing, one of the Henniger boys they meet in town mentions to them that when they talk to Matt, don't mention that you're here to set up the lordship. So does that mean like Mussa was only a few days away from setting up wardship, because wasn't this meant to be like the last place? I think we heard that
Yeah.
they were getting pretty close, but
Yeah.
like I just had in my head that Found Kennet was happening and Musa was still a month or two away from finishing his thing. Whereas this is feeling a lot more Arc 13y and like, oh, all
Yeah.
these timelines are actually
Actually
quite
coming
closely
together. Yeah.
aligned. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think we didn't realize how close Musa was to making his move on Kennet.
Yeah, I think we'd heard something like 40 out of 50-ish
Yes.
at some point. I don't even remember if
But
that
that
was
was
in
a
these two
few.
chapters.
I feel like that was a few chapters ago.
Yeah. I guess I just didn't realize. Like, we knew he was saving this area for about last, and apparently they're already,
They're
scouting the
almost
area.
there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I want to pull out this quote from Eloise and Lizzie, where Eloise says, "It was a lot nicer when we were on their good side," speaking about the Kentiers. And Elizabeth's response is, "If they sent even one other our way, I'd ask if we could talk." And this is bullshit, right? Like, we see Elizabeth does not really have any desire to negotiate with them. She chats to Matthew, and really, that's a very. I guess we'll talk about that in a second, but she isn't actually listening to anything.
No, and her dad was the same in the call, where like she basically had to get him to promise to think on what she was saying.
Yes.
Like,
Is
and
that not the default you would expect? If I say something, you at least
Yeah.
hear it? No.
and like I guess like she's just a bit her father's daughter because she like hears what Matt is saying but doesn't listen.
Yes, exactly.
Well, like, this is where we get that one quote where I think he says something like Matthew says, "I don't want to be in a wardship run by a man like Muscle. Like, that's not okay." And Elizabeth says to him, No, it's fine, because you're more of a practitioner now than an other, so it'll be great for you." And it's just like, fucking whoosh on that one.
100%.
Like, the fact that he's not another, like, is almost the problem now. Like, or, the fact that he's not another now doesn't discredit the fact that all the others will suffer. Like, she's just so far from being able to consider other rights that it just, like, completely goes over her.
Yeah, let's get into this conversation, shall we? Because, Lizzie Driscoll heads into the domain claim and attempts to bargain with Matthew, and just completely, as you said, is just not listening, right? I want to pull out this quote that I thought was really funny. At some point, she says, "To drive my point home, I think if you use words like aphorism, that's pretty much sealing the deal on you being a practitioner, Mr. Mars." So, one, aphorism is totally the kind of word that another would use. I don't even know, like... she's maybe thinking of goblins as opposed to something like, I don't know, Schatzmugel or something.
Yeah, it definitely just feels like in her head, practitioners are smart and educated, and others
are dumb and brutish. Yeah, exactly.
Or even the clever ones that don't have that same high society education. So nonsense. I mean, it is a funny joke though. To be
sure,
like, it's coming from a really bad place, but even Matthew laughs.
At it, but like it. You're right that she so clearly missed the point that she thinks what she's arguing here is, no, you're a practitioner, Matthew.
We'll be one of us.
We'll treat you well because you're a practitioner, and that's like completely not the point.
And Matt starts to get really frustrated because that she keeps sort of saying that, and he's just like, "Man, this isn't going anywhere." Like, you can't even see that others need respect, and it's just this conversation isn't going to go a good way.
Yeah.
I do like, though, like, I guess leaning into that, Liz is quite good at connecting with Matt as a person. I specifically wanted to call out this hilarious bit where, as she's sort of leaving, she says, like, "Good luck with the ex-wife situation. She looks like a real mess." And he's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Yeah." Like, she's 100% on the money there, but because it's leaning into that he's a practitioner, she's an other, like.
Interesting.
And like, it's Liz connecting with him as a human person. Like, she's very nice and great to be around if you're a human, basically. But she just doesn't comprehend the other perspectives in both senses of the word.
Good one. That's a good one. Definitely. And it just is so frustrating. It's so not, like, she's not even on the right level to engage. So heading outside, things start to kick off. She no contests the domain claim because, he's a practitioner. It's fine. You wouldn't fight a practitioner. She's against inter-practitioner conflicts.
Well, she actually kind of is more okay with it when he's like, "Oh, I'm doing this to get the house off my ex-wife," and she kind of she understands that more than like any of his other reasons, which is a bit like,
it's a divorce.
It's the stupid reason that he's doing it, kind of.
Yeah, so yeah, things start to kick off outside. A fight is brewing, but it's a tricksy kind of fight. The Kenneteers are very sneaky and smart throughout these two
Yeah,
chapters.
this opening bit where like one of the Hennigers kind of gets baited into having to attack his own team is
So good.
great.
So good. And yeah, like that's consistent throughout the entirety of this chapter is the Kenneteers are so prepared that they're able to take time to say, okay, we're going to give you a chance. Do you want to
Yeah.
actually talk or do you want to be a piece of shit? And they say, we'll be a piece of shit. And then the Kenneteers go, all right. And then they drop like the next trick they had up their sleeve.
Yeah.
And every time it's so well thought out and like perfectly designed to counter exactly what they're doing, which implies to me they had enough information about this group that they were able to plan, which means sharing information, it definitely works.
I mean, I think that's probably part of it, but also I think the other side is just like Kennett's power is the diversity of
Yes.
their
Yes.
powers and others and stuff. And I think like it's more just that when those people showed up, they can be like, well, we'll get some goblins and stuff. Like, yeah, it's much more about like what do they want, like what do they need? Like they can be more reactive because they've got more tools in their arsenal, basically.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just great. And I mean, obviously, like the fact that they sort of have all the Undercity residents too. I think I'm jumping ahead a bit, but just like I loved seeing them used as sort of another flavor of goblins where you just get swarmed by these people who are aggressive as fuck.
Mm.
And you know, they're not fully better because we just laughed at the Henniger getting baited into attack his own side, but we got that guy with 3 dogs in the Undercity, and one of his dogs goes for his neighbor while the other 2 attack the practitioner.
Yeah.
So you know, bit of that stupid violence on both sides.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, you know, all violence is stupid violence.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Lucy shows up, tries to convince Elizabeth to stand down, and she refuses.
Yeah.
You know, again, had hope that this
Yeah.
chapter is all about building up your hopes that maybe they will actually listen, and then they don't.
And she's so close because she kind of gets it. Like something to do with all the fighting. Like the only reason these practitioners get out of here is, as Eloise and Liz like to keep reminding us, Kenneth is playing with one arm tied behind their back. They're
100%.
intentionally holding back. And Milo calls it dumb because it is really the only reason these guys make it out.
Yes.
And like Liz knows that. She can like see that what they're doing is morally better, but she just
still refuses.
She can't get there. And you're like, come on, Liz. Like you're so trapped in thinking about like Muss's test and all this nonsense. It just it hurts.
It's tragic. It's really sad because you can see that they're so close. They're so close, but you just don't get that final moment to push them over the edge.
Yeah.
I don't know. Should we talk about the next chapter? They obviously kind of work so well together.
Just quickly, I want to talk about the ending to 17.8. So the sort of final things are when Liz says no, like sorry, Angie's like, hey, that's the first thing you've said that I respect.
Good sign.
Yeah. And Liz specifically thinks to herself, that doesn't feel like a great endorsement for this course of action. But she didn't see a better one. And I just love that ending as like just summarizing what this chapter sort of was, which is like Liz just making a bad call,
knowing it's a bad call.
Looking at the people around her and saying, this doesn't feel like the right call based on who's supporting it. But I guess this will do because I don't really see any better ones. And then like after that, there's a line about like Lucy feels bad about this too, which is just like also she's hurting the good people, and also now you're pushing people like Lucy to doing stuff they don't want to do. Like Lucy doesn't want to fight, but she will.
Yeah.
And so it's like people doing dumb shit like what Liz is doing is what makes everyone else have to fight back.
Yeah, it's wild to me that Elizabeth can't see what they're doing is wrong here, right? Like, they are basically just playing the parts of, conquerors, right? Of colonialists. There's literally nothing else to it. That's just what they're doing.
But they're bringing peace and stability, Ruben.
That's always been... When has that metaphor not been for something horrible? We've got all this great peace over on our side, and we just want to bring it over to you by force. Yeah. It's actually ridiculous. It's so disappointing. Anyway.
Speaking of,
we go from Lizzie to Eloise. So we start in the past. This one has a few more flashbacks from Eloise's perspective. And we start with Eloise being taught by a kind of failed family member who offers to show her the ways of being a disappointment.
And we've got to talk about how this opens with her getting like the shit slapped out of her. Because it's a great, like, on my first read, I was like, oh shit, has Eloise been caught by the Turtle Queen? Like, how did this happen? What have we missed? And then it's all sort of a fake out to lead into this flashback, but also just like reinforces my fear of the Turtle Queen because it sort of helps me compare her to Eloise's family, which, spoiler alert, don't seem great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that as a connection. Like we've just spent the first part of the previous chapter talking about how toxic and poisonous the Turtle Queen is.
Yeah.
And here's another slap based.
Am I being unfair to the Turtle
No,
Queen?
you're
Like,
not.
why but to
Oh,
you...
why but Twiqua? Yeah. You're being unfair to why but to Twiqua?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get back to this chapter because this is an interesting offer that Eloise gets. The offer is like stop trying and people will stop pushing you so hard. Really?
Yeah. Well, she sort of says there are two ways you can come out of this as yourself. You can be such a disappointment that they basically
Leave you alone.
Yeah. Or you can be so great that they leave you alone. Or maybe I could just run away with you.
Mm.
Or also you could just be subsumed like Sam.
Yeah.
And it just sucks. So like
It does.
Because Eloise is like 10 at this point.
Yeah.
Like, imagine grappling with that shit as a 10-year-old.
Yeah, and you can see Eloise is kind of struggling to grapple with it. Like it doesn't really, she's considering it on some level, but the weight
She
of it
doesn't
is
comprehend it.
exactly.
Yeah.
She ends up making no choice, right? Really, which is obviously her inaction is a choice in and of itself, but she ends up not being able to kind of grapple with it enough to make any active choice. And that's kind of the metaphor for the whole thing, right?
Yeah, like this fits into the whole Massa system so well because like Eloise's family's thing is such a great reflection of Massa's system because everything was a test. Eloise was being graded on how well she got the shit beaten out of her. Like it maps so closely to what Elizabeth and Eloise are going through with Massa in the modern day, where everything's graded. Even when you win, it's kind of like the carrot hung in front of them is if you do well, we'll let you pick your husband. But it's actually a really fake offer because if you picked a bad husband, then you lose the favor and go backwards. So like as you sort of dig in further, then it's like, well, now you get to pick your own husband.
But if you make the wrong choice,
you better pick the one that we want.
Yeah.
And like it's the same thing that Massa does. It's like you give the illusion of more choices as you climb the ladder, but really those choices you still are pushed to dig further in with them. And Eloise talks a lot later about how she kind of thinks she's escaped by picking Ulysses, and I think we can see how that's not really true because she leaps at the chance for her family to do well, which was baffling because if you escaped your family, why would you want them to do well?
Like, yeah. The choices of Schatzmugel and Ulysses feel like they're not hyper traditional, but also not against the family.
Yeah, escape seems like a strong word for what she's done. She's kind of carved her own path within their path, which I guess is what Gemma said was the good option. It's kind of like you can play their game, but still kind of be yourself, and that's what Eloise has managed to do.
Has kind of decided to do.
Yeah.
So Eloise. We jump back to the present. Eloise is taking sight of Lucy and her crew, preparing to step to them. She prepares to serve a can of whoop-ass to them, but it doesn't go as cleanly as she might hope.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this like framework.
Sorry, that should be survey.
Yeah, no, I got it.
I got it wrong.
Yeah, I enjoyed this framework of like was it site step survey?
Yeah.
It was just a really fun way to sort of explain how a connection manipulator would do in fights because I was sort of wondering how does Eloise do in like a grungy fight against Undercity people? And you can really sort of see how she's actually a great sort of not general, but like her thing is very much keeping an eye on what's happening at a macro scale and being a bit of a tactician, like moving people around, getting enemies to focus on her or making them look away. Like, and that framework is great, especially because it also they say it applies to engagements, which also includes like non-combat.
Yeah.
So like we get to kind of see what it looks like in this combat. Then we can actually kind of see how she's using it in things like meeting Schwarzmugel, talking to Massa. Like
Yeah.
it is pervasive in how she like approaches everything. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a useful framework, and I like that step is one of the steps, right? Like,
Yeah,
make sure you're taking a step in the
move.
right direction.
Yeah.
Um, and it's disappointing that she doesn't take a step in the right direction later, I guess. um, yeah, again, like the Kennedys are very prepared. The stuff with the smoke that then can turn into Monty as a
Yeah.
vector, it's like so
Because
good.
we didn't know they had that up their sleeve. Like that was a surprise for us as well.
Yeah,
I was a bit like, Lucy, what's the smoke ring rune about?
yeah.
Like, what is this? And then it was a multi thing. I'm like, oh, that's
It
cool. Like,
actually makes a ton of
yeah.
sense. Of course, it's perfect.
My favorite part of this was the like again, just the Undercity mobs. Actually, no, the favorite part is when they run to the Undercity. And I think it was actually, I can't remember if it's in this chapter or the previous one actually, but there is that moment where they're like, we got to get out of here. Let's
Yeah.
like go to the Undercity. And she flips a coin and like goes, and they go there, and Verona's just like, "Stop,
Welcome.
And it's like, go
Now
back,
it's my
go
turn.
back.
No. Wrong way, wrong way. Can we get to the fountain yet? Yeah, no, it's pretty funny.
And especially like because obviously we're building up here to like Sin being unleashed. I think
Yes.
this section ends with her being like
With
Sin
her opening her
to
eye.
it.
Yeah.
And it's been like a chapter and a half at this point of like Elizabeth being like, man, Sin, my family, you know, if a town is like blowing up, we'll be like, should we involve Sin?
Yeah.
So she's just so high in your estimation, like you're just ready for her to absolutely unleash, and it's like it's such a great little hype ending to a section.
Yeah, and I think like it's not false. Sin's incredibly powerful. She finally opens her eyes, and it basically means that she can just be like, pew, 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 like like Sparky Boom Man level of just look at somebody and deliver violence upon them.
Although that said, she seems to go through the majority of her current power
Yes.
in this, and I don't like.
Yes.
I don't know how long it takes her to
Yeah,
recharge that.
Yeah.
Like it might just be a day or something, but like if this had to go on for another 20 minutes, I think Sin was looking to run out of power.
100%.
Which is like a real testament to Kenneth that this chick charges 5 figures an hour
Yeah.
for her services. And
Verona
Kenneth
just had a piece of chalk. That's all she needed.
Kenneth was like to the point where they almost drained her.
Yeah, I mean that's again what is so spectacular about this is their preparedness and their way of doing things gets such a good showing every time it's on it's in the limelight.
We do get reminded though, this is like, these are like the D tier practitioners in Mus's organization.
Sin seems powerful.
You're right, but he's still like testing her, right? Like
Yes.
when he comes in force, he's going to be bringing the Anthem Teds, himself, like all these. I think people who are going to make Sin look like at best on their level. So it's like, it's a very different story, I think, if Kenneth has to go up against 10 Sins at once.
Yeah, true. But still, they do well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we get some moments where Eloise is like recognizing they're trying to be really nice about it, and still doesn't comprehend what she's dealing with.
Because Eloise is the one who's mostly reminding all the others, hey, they're not trying to kill us. They're actually taking it easy, and we shouldn't escalate because then they might, which is like, good old sort of rules of war sort of forming. Like Elizabeth knows what's up. Like if Milo was left to his own devices, he would have escalated.
He would have started trying to murder people, and then I think he probably would have gotten killed.
Yeah. Because I don't know that the Kenneteers would be on board for the murder or whatever, but like the Undercity residents are just going to mob him, presumably, like, if they can.
Yeah. Again, come on, just like Eloise, recognize that you're the baddies in this situation. It's not that hard.
She is so close. Like even more than Elizabeth, she's someone who, like, I think sees that what she's doing is kind of wrong, but has made that commitment to excel and be successful.
Yeah, and that's the worst part is she's doing this for her family's status, right? Like pretty unambiguously, that's what Musa is offering to her,
and to hers within it. Like,
sure.
I almost prefer if it's a selfish motivation, because I'd rather she's doing this for herself within her family than her family. Yeah.
It's just so disappointing.
Yeah.
There's no other way to say it.
But like more than like, because Liz, it was like she just had that blind spot. With Eloise, I almost get the impression she doesn't have it. She's
No.
just made that conscious decision. And
Yeah.
we'll talk about it a bit more when she talks to Lucy about it towards the end of the
Yes.
chapter. But the real horrifying bit of this whole section that we need to talk about is as this whole fight is going on, Matt is stuck in his house with Angie.
Yeah, terrifying.
Like, he's the real victim in this.
Yeah, what do you think? Was there a contest there, do you think? Or do you think it was just stalling and then doing a no contest?
I fuck knows.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine he wanted to chat. Maybe Angie just talked at him for like half an hour.
Yeah, yeah, horrifying. So yeah, we get another flashback to back at the to Eloise and Musa chatting, and Musa kind of recruiting her and informing her of who's going to be on this mission, and kind of, indicating to her that it's a test and all that stuff.
I love to hate Musa. Like, I was in awe throughout this whole segment at just how effortlessly he's created, like, that he's just a piece of shit, basically. Like, he's like, hey, Eloise, you're testing this person, you're testing this person, you're testing this person. She's like, is this a test for me too? And he's like, essentially, but, what are you going to do about it? Like, here's the carrot on the stick for you. Like, he's so good at what he does. It's just a shame that what he does is be the worst.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right.
Because, I don't know. I'm constantly impressed when we see him, also just how good he is at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he offers Toronto to Eloise's family, right?
Yeah.
Which is clearly a very big seat.
Yeah, and like his logic really makes sense. He's like, I'm going to go form like a little Canberra, like make a little political capital, but you guys can have the big one because I'd rather you were on my side than fighting me. Is this essentially what he says, like straight up? He's like, I'll give you this as a sort of peace offering. And yeah, it's very much Eloise hears this and goes, yes, my family deserves all of Toronto. Like, these people who sent me to Gemma to get the shit slapped out of me because I wasn't, wiping my nose properly at age 10. Let's give them Toronto.
Yeah, give them some more power and influence. Yeah, 100%. We then get some... actually, let's talk about Milo here, because Musa gives us the true picture of Milo, which I think we had gotten hints of. Like in the previous chapter, he's referred to as a murderer, right?
I had him
but every
pegged
practitioner is a murderer, so I didn't really read too much into it.
I had him pegged as a discount Henniger. Like, the way he's introduced in Liz's thing is a bit like the Sonjates are a little bit like the Hennigers.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so he's some like shittier Henniger. Okay, sure. But no, it's different and worse. Or worse? No, I don't know.
I think worse. So basically, he was sent to assassinate a Sonjate, and they were like, hey, instead of doing that, you're the exact kind of person we want to now do. Which, I mean, if you can say that unironically, I'm sure that doesn't need any self-reflection.
Doesn't Musa say he seems like a great dude? He reminds me of myself. I just don't hang out with him because he's not big time enough yet. And I was like, that's a fucking indictment. If I've ever heard one.
It's ridiculous. I love that Milo is so... That's Milo's real power, is the ability to make practitioners not self-reflect on how much they like him.
Yeah, well, because Liz has agreed to go on a date with him, hasn't she? Like,
yeah.
But
he's nice about it. He's I feel kind of awkward about forcing you to go on a date with me. So you do have feelings about Milo.
Yeah, like his practice is so psychopathic.
Yeah.
But in his dealings with practitioners, he didn't come across as like such a cold, like the psychopath I picture from like serial killer fucking, movies where it's like he has zero emotions. He's not like that, but he's clearly just able to switch it off and be like, kill these 13 people, get some of their skills. Great idea.
He's gone to the Hebert school of compartmentalization, for sure. But yeah, like it's wild. It's wild. There's no indication that the people that he murders are bad people or anything like that.
I kind of almost got the impression it's explicitly not.
Yeah, like I went and was looking for it because I was like, oh, presumably he's just murdering bad people or something to try and justify it. And I went through and I was like, no, it just seems like he will just murder innocent people, and that's something they're totally fine with.
Yeah, like people in the chat are bringing up Mirth Strike in particular. They're just like, Milo extends this abuse of others that Liz had to just innocence as well. Like, they're just not a consideration really, and that gels with Musa's whole shtick, I guess. Like, take what you can get. And because like his backstory is kind of badass. Like, he, as an innocent dude, he just went and managed to take on the Hennigers and an other and get them to a draw. Like, that's pretty intense. sorry, not the Henniggers. I think he was sent up the Sonjates,
Yes.
which discount Henniggers. But
Yeah.
still, like an innocent dude going to like war mage practitioners and another and getting them to a draw. It's like, oh, this guy's really promising. Let's let him become like a codified serial killer.
Fucking the worst. Actually, incredible how unself-aware practitioners are.
He's like the worst version of John because he's choosing to do this.
Yes, exactly. That's perfect. I think someone say it in chat? I can't
Oh.
remember. Someone might have mentioned it in chat as well. Like, it is actually a perfect comparison because he intentionally murders people to take qualities from them, which was John, right?
Yeah, he's trying to do what John did, whereas John was like, I don't want to do this
Yeah,
anymore.
I explicitly don't want to. Maybe we can feed enough innocence to Milo that he will grow a heart.
Oh yeah, we should have let him kill John.
Yeah. Oh, dang. Oh well.
Stupid Charles.
Yeah, I want to just call out. We get an interaction with Eloise and Ulysses, sorry, in the next little section, and it's so pure and delightful. Like they're so cute, and they make Schatzmikkel, who is an embodiment of perversion, kind of blush with the depths of their love. It's delightful.
Yeah, I mean, I do still like, even as a reader, I find just the aggressive PDA that they do a little off-putting. Like, I remember that when we were at the BHI, every scene they're in, they're just so huggy and kissy, and it's a bit like, oh, come on, guys, like, there's
Yeah.
other people in the room.
Yeah.
Well, we got to talk about this bit. So Eloise like agrees to do this thing with Massa. She's going to elevate her family, and then she turns to Ulysses and she's like, "Hey, don't become a
Don't be
practitioner.
too much like a practitioner.
They're all
yeah.
terrible." And
Yeah.
it's like, you can't do that, Eloise. You can't, like, you're either in or you're out. Like,
Yeah.
like I hate this was just hilarious to me that she's like, I picked you because you're outside. You're not like the other practitioners, and I'm working with them, and so you are too. But don't hang out with them and
Yeah.
become like it's just nonsense. Like,
Now, I'm going to go off and elevate some hardcore practitioners that really contribute to that system. But also, I know that system is bad.
Yeah,
you know? But I'm just going to go do it. But I know it's bad.
Like, yeah, it is her being like yeah. Somebody brought up self-aware wolves, and it's
Yeah.
just perfect. She's like, yeah, this stuff's really bad. I'm gonna keep doing it though. Like, I think this was the moment reading the chapter where I was like, oh, Eloise is. We're not getting her on side.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
She knows, and she's still making these choices.
Yeah. So yeah, we jump back to the present. Sin starts opening her eyes and unleashing power, and she's pretty strong, as we have mentioned. Yeah. Can I want to call out? There's a section here that I really liked. Where there's a few different kind of dangerous things going on. Milo says, "You wouldn't have made it, but I can handle being cut." Eloise says, "Okay, I think the point stands. They're gonna try and get into a fight and injure some people." And Liz says, "Plus, it's wrong. They're still mostly human." Talking about the undersiders. And
it's not wrong because they're human, Liz. Like, you're so close and yet so far.
It's fucked up. Yeah, I don't know. It's ridiculous. So yeah,
yeah, just I don't know. Just yeah, that whole vibe of, well, yeah, like the fact that Liz's issue with the murders, they're human, is just like, oh, like, Liz, I thought we were done with this after it wasn't your chapter anymore, but here you are.
Yeah. Yeah. We get to Eloise's first meeting with Schatz, and it's delightful and unsettling. He's like so on board to be her familiar immediately.
He's creepy, man.
He's
Like,
so good. He's such a cheeky little bugger. And
sorry, I love that she's like, "You won't hurt me, right?" And he's like, "Only when you need me to."
Yeah.
So what
so
sort of an
perfect.
answer is that?
It's a great answer. It's so perfect. I can't remember exactly where it is in this chapter. I don't know if it's happened yet, where we're talking about, but there's the bit where Eloise describes the feeling of what it's like when Schatzmikkel emerges from
yeah, it's
her
like
skin.
a greasy rope,
like pulling out a long worm of her arm. It's fucking delightful. I love Schatzmikkel.
Although, can I ask? I don't feel like I grasp what Schatzmoogle is. Like,
Yeah.
and we never did, and that was fine. But now it feels like we've gotten the explanation, and I just didn't get it.
So he's a high perversion. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no. I very much vibed with Eloise when she's like, "What are you?" He's like, "A hyperversion." Oh, but what type of other are you? A hyperversion. And I was like, "What is?"
Yeah,
that's not helpful.
Well, so it seems like he just kind of likes finding or is drawn to places where humans are already being kind of perverted, and then feeds on the ones who are like even more.
Well, it sounds like he's like a super animus.
Yeah,
and yet like he he feeds on the people. Also, no, he doesn't. I got the impression he feeds on the people who come to do weird shit to the pervert. Like, so if like a goblin came up and was going to put a spell on
Right.
like the people in the orgy to
Right.
make it like worse somehow, he would feed on the goblin.
Right. Maybe.
But he
Yeah.
like, and he talks about he's like his life is apparently building up to like inventing some all new whole level of perverseness,
Good on
which
you.
is like great. I vibe with that part. Like, but
Do you think he
like,
has?
what is that? How do I am a bit confused about how that connects to him just wanting to be Eloise's familiar. Like,
Is it just because he wants to get Eloise to try out some depraved stuff with Ulysses? Do you think? It's like you can be
did
my
she know
test bed for
Ulysses?
stuff.
I don't think. I think this is pre Ulysses. I think
Well,
she had Schmuck. Yeah.
her family's all about making marriages,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I did wonder, like, is him siding up with Eloise part of the plan to create the ultimate perversion, or
Oh
it?
yeah, she's part of the ultimate perversion. I can
Yeah,
see
I don't
that.
know. Like, it's just it feels like there's something I'm missing or something that hasn't clicked for me with Schwarzmugel, where it's like we get it, and I kind of sort of in a very general sense kind of understand what he is, but I'm still missing why he does what he does and like why he agreed to go up with Eloise. Like, there's I
I
don't
think
know. I don't know if he's a main enough character that I should expect some big resolution for Schwarzmugel in the story.
the
But yeah,
the ultimate perversion, the final taboo, Elliot, is practitioners actually giving a shit about others, and that's Schwarzmuggel's goal.
yeah, the perversion of order of
Yeah,
practitioners. Yeah,
exactly. Schwarzmugel is genuinely the hero. Um, yeah. Anywho, so the gang arrive at where Marlon is being held, and there's a scrappy fight, but they do eventually break her out. It actually is not going too well until hero of the day Angie
yeah.
shows up to prove herself useful.
We actually hadn't talked about the fact that technically the side mission of why they were here was to rescue Marlon, and that was part of the test.
Yes.
Yeah, it was sort of brought up as a bit like if you go in there,
Yeah.
see if she's around, maybe grab her.
Yeah. But they
So apparently
they
they did know Marlon was because I thought Kenneth was under the impression maybe that wasn't known
I
yet.
think they didn't know it originally, but
Yeah,
it got to the
they
point where
must
I
have
think they
figured it
figured
out.
it
Yeah,
out.
okay.
Yeah. But yeah, we get another scene here. The resolution of Eloise maybe wanting to switch sides, where we get the conversation with Lucy, and she throws out very weak source arguments of like, "Oh, you think murder is bad? Well, you wear clothes that are made in a country where they
Yeah,
don't pay enough wages." And
it's
Lucy's
that.
like, what is that a justification for murder?"
It's that very like if you can't live perfectly 100% morally,
Yeah,
then you may as well just go
just
fucking buck
never
wild.
exactly
Which
right.
is yeah, you know,
A great argument.
yeah, exactly. Like it's that living, morally in a corrupt society sort of thing where Eloise has just been like, well, can't do it, so why bother?
Yeah.
Um,
But I think the fun part about this is Eloise leaves this conversation knowing she's wrong, right?
yeah,
Like clearly at the end she just decides she has to stop engaging because she just knows that like she doesn't internalize it like that.
no,
But you can
yeah,
see that she just doesn't have any further responses.
yeah, pretty much. Like she's noticeably like uncomfortable with how it all went. Basically,
Yeah.
yeah. You've got a quote here in the notes that how about how she's bothered and she just sort of swipes her hand to make the connection go away. She's like, I can't do this, like
Yeah,
because she
exactly.
doesn't want to face that truth. And I think that is a bit of a recurring thing, like because there's that moment where Schatzmugel like tests her with the message to Gemma, where he kind of says how you respond to Gemma here will sort of set the pattern for how you're going to interact with the monsters in your life, and it's clearly established now in this section here that she made peace with Gemma,
Mm.
which is very much like she allowed the ugliness in life in, and maybe that's where Schatzmugel comes in. He's like, if the perversion is meant to be a bad thing,
Mm.
like he's sort of the ugliness of the world, and she was like, yeah, come on in.
But he's so
Um,
chill.
yeah, no, I don't want that to be the case because he seems great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. We don't know what he was up to in his downtime.
No, it's true. I'm sure it was. I'm sure there's nothing bad that a high perversion could get up to. Um,
He
but yeah,
does say he's a bad guy at one point, but like half implied that he means it in the sexy way.
yeah, he's a bad
Yeah,
boy.
exactly.
Punish me. Yeah. Um, So yeah, the battle is over. Both sides kind of limp away. Marlon has escaped, but the meteor begins to descend.
This is so fun.
It is fun.
We've got to talk about the Angie moment though.
Sure.
Like after two chapters of build up, if for no other reason, I want to talk about it just because she targets Elizabeth too, and that was so funny.
Yeah,
It's so shitty.
she really is just the worst, isn't she?
Yeah, but like you would be like
You would be,
It's
of
so hard.
course.
It's so hard. Like I feel bad hating Angie because it's not really her fault that she's like this, but
No.
also just like, what are you doing?
But I mean, it's the practitioner society that continues to exploit her, right? Like,
Yeah.
and she is willingly being a part of that. She is effectively what she is doing is choosing to live in her own trauma permanently,
Yeah.
right? Like that's how she's now defined herself. So I don't feel like terrible for making fun of her, but obviously it's
Yeah, well, yeah, like all her stuff about or, like love potioning a fucking YouTuber
yeah.
husband
Yeah.
things. Just yeah.
But yeah, so the setup at the end of this chapter is the meteor's descending, heavily threatening the innocence of everybody in Kennet. So if you do too much magic, you're
Yeah.
gonna bear the burden of that. And I mean, that's a good way to stop people like Musser in their tracks, right?
Which is like because this wasn't we didn't get told that that was part of the plan, but it
No.
almost feels like it has to be part of the plan
Yeah.
because this is the only thing that is going to cause Musser to take pause.
Yeah,
It's fucking wild.
it's
Yeah.
brilliant. I love it so much.
But was it like it can't have been on purpose. Otherwise, Kenneth would have talked about it, right?
No, I think I agree. I don't think they intentionally did it, but it's such a good fuck you to Massa. It's oh, you want responsibility of the area? Here you go.
Yeah, this is the area.
Like, oh no, not like that. Yeah, it's very fun. It's very fun. Yeah, I love the way Kurt Mahoney and Cheddar said it. The one thing that gives Massa pause, the possibility of having to fully own consequences.
Yep.
Good shit. Good shit. Do you think they're going to either of these two will flip sides? You said not until it's already too late. So depressing.
I mean, Eloise feels so far away from it. Like
I
she
don't
seems
know.
quite like there's the things there, but she's very entrenched. Maybe Ulysses will pull her out. Like
Yeah.
honestly, that feels like the best hope. But I could see Eloise getting presented with circumstances where she changes, but I can't picture what they look like after this. She seems kind of stubborn about it. Elizabeth, if we could just crack the whole others are people too thing with her, I think we've got it. But like, she's been so blind to it in these two chapters. I don't know how I don't know how anyone's going to achieve that.
Yeah, I don't know. I have hope that if somebody says to Eloise, "Do you really want to make more people like your family? Do you want to perpetuate your family?" Really,
yeah, why didn't
is the
Ulysses
question.
say that?
Yeah.
I wish he could have been like, hey, if all these people suck, why are we doing this?
Yeah, why do you want to help them? And it's like I don't know. I feel like that can break through to Eloise. I really do. But maybe I'm being too optimistic.
I think Eloise specifically says you can't change my mind with like a 5-minute pep talk to Lucy. But she didn't rule
take
out
at least 7 minutes.
minutes.
No, you're right. I think it's possible. I don't know. It's hard to say.
It feels harder. I guess Elizabeth feels easier to me because I know what we need to fix. It feels like there's one issue, and if we get through that, that's like 99% of the job done. Eloise is the one that I don't know how you create a situation that's going to make her change her mind about her like no moral way to live in society thing.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the end of the chapters.
Yeah.
Do you think we're at the end of the end of the arc here?
I don't think so, especially because it's 17.b. Like a
You don't
dot
think
B. The like the start of the alphabet ones are never the end of the arc.
You're right. The system is very consistent. No, I don't know. I think it could be the ending of the meteor descending feels pretty end of
I don't
arc.
know. I feel like we've got to round it out in this. I feel like we've got another handful of chapters in this arc.
We haven't really seen the end of Matthew's domain claim yet.
Yeah.
So maybe that will be the finale.
We'll see.
Do you think we'll get a dot C or something? Do you think we'll get a Angie Driscoll perspective or something? What's her name? Angie Demarest.
Demarest, yeah. We could do. I reckon it's probably time to go back to the Kenneteers for at least a chapter, and then we can go back for a
Fuck
C.
the Kenneteers. I want to stay with the shitty practitioners.
Yeah, they're just offering shitty surrender ultimatums. You know, ultimatums aren't a good thing to do.
Yeah. We were running a discussion question for the past fortnight, Elliot.
Yeah. We asked everyone, is there any other in Kennet you think is irredeemable? Do any of them need to do more to atone for their previous misdeeds?
Yeah. I think across the board, everybody said
I
Edith.
was going to bring up the same point. We had 100% hit rate with Edith,
Yeah.
so good job, Edith. You suck the
Yeah,
most.
Edith is guaranteed irredeemable. And that's worrying because, it feels
Yeah.
like, it really feels like, in Edith's mind at least, Edith thinks there's an Edith redemption arc coming up.
I don't know that Edith necessarily feels like she needs that much redemption, which is the
No.
problem.
No, she doesn't, but I think she thinks there's an Edith redemption arc
Yeah.
gonna happen.
I just think it's funny though, because Edith is the Brett of the supernatural
Yes,
threats.
so true.
And like Brett is the other worst thing in the story. Like the runaway things people hate in this is the Brett and Edith. Like,
Yeah.
it's that really like singularly terrible thing. Like
Yeah.
with Brett, it's all aimed at Verona. With Edith, it's all aimed at Matt. Like,
So what you're saying is, in your pale fan fiction, it would be Matthew ends up with Louise, Edith ends up with Brett.
I think we've joked about
Have
Edith
we?
and Brett getting together before, and it was a
Dream
bit like, I
power
don't think
couple.
either of them deserves that.
I don't know. I'm coming around on the idea.
I think they're both so terrible that the other person doesn't deserve it.
Mm.
But yeah, we did get an answer from Landis963 that I wanted to collect because they didn't like labeling anyone as completely irredeemable, which is
Sure.
probably where I sit. I
Yeah.
kind of feel like if you're gonna totally write someone off, I don't really know what the point is anymore. But they did sort of say if I had to like pick one person who's the least redeemable or is going to be the hardest, it would be Edith. So,
Yeah, I really think.
and well, that's sort of where I land. I think.
Yeah, the first step of being redeemable is being willing to take accountability for the fact that your actions are shitty, right?
Yeah.
And Edith is clearly just not there.
Yeah, but even like hers
Um,
just came from a shitty, selfish place. Like with Charles, he's the same in that way. Like he doesn't see anything wrong with what he did.
mm,
But his is coming from like a more understandable place where it's like you're wrong, but also you suffered so badly
Yeah.
that I see why you think this.
Yeah,
Edith was just a selfish dickhead.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. I think the other one that jumps out to me in that respect is Rid Tom said the milkmaid, partially because, or in large part because, the milkmaid has not yet really accepted that they've done bad things. Not that we've seen. We haven't
Yeah.
got that much FaceTime with the milkmaid. So,
Yeah. Compared to like Ridtom then brought up Killwagon, who said Killwagon hasn't really like had any punishment yet, but seems to acknowledge that killing was bad, and has
wants
remorse.
to stop. Yeah, he wants to change his patterns for sure.
Yeah, which is interesting. Like because Ridtom definitely seemed to advocate that people need punishment for previous stuff, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I kind of see what they mean. Like because they brought up at the start of their answer Toad, Swallow, Miss, and Guillerme as people who haven't redeemed themselves yet for their past misdeeds. And I think that that's quite true of Guillerme. I don't think we've ever seen Guillerme say, yeah, I shouldn't have spent that 1,000 years torturing that person or whatever weird shit he's done that we haven't heard about. But like with Toad, Swallow, and Miss, I'd argue they've shown remorse. Toad, Swallow maybe is a bit iffy on that regard, but like they show remorse and they're trying to build something better. And I kind of feel like that is a redemption. Like I don't know at this stage how anything punitive would help. It's just going to set them back in creating better things.
Yeah. Wonder Bitch 26 also said Toad. We're talking about Toad saying the thing that prevents him from really feeling like he's redeemed himself is that he still feels like he's a schemer. Still feels like he's being too. I don't know if Machiavellian is the right word, but like behind the scenes, right? And that is just like if you're operating in the shadows to some extent, it's because you think that people will be against what you're doing.
Yeah, we keep finding out more secrets he's been hiding, which and like he's only owning up to stuff once it kind of comes to light.
Exactly, which is very.
It doesn't help the sort of trust.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when it does come up, he does tend to be pretty good about saying that wasn't great and I should do better. And like blah blah. But like things like the pecker snot thing, he only owned up to that after he got called out.
What else haven't we found out from Cody?
Yeah. I mean, it feels like stuff like the milkmaid has to be the worst of it, but it's that sort of pattern, I guess. Yeah.
I like that Megafire called out Rook, because Rook to me is a really interesting case of this. Rook
Yeah,
is such a uh, interesting case for Kennet as a whole, really,
yeah, yeah.
because Rook is on side, but really doesn't want to change in any tangible way.
It's it's been weird because yeah, Rook seemingly got on board because she's known Miss, and like Rook understands academically that she's lost the same war like 100 times, and Miss was trying something new. So Rook's kind of on board just because she respects Miss, and she's like, well, let's try something new because the old way clearly isn't working.
Yeah,
But then she's so entrenched in the old way that at the same time she does keep kind of like relapsing a bit. Um, and so, yeah, Megafire brings up that point that, like, the concern with Rook would be when the war is over, is Rook going to be able to live with that?
yeah, which I don't necessarily think we know yet. Like, I feel like Rook.
Can't she just change herself to make herself not a warrior anymore?
Well, I don't think she turns that scalpel on herself, right?
Well, I thought that was the whole point of Oni is they started as other things and then turned
True,
themselves.
true.
I don't know. The ultimate irony of her being unable to change from the warrior, like, is
Yeah,
just the funny thing about like the Oni. Like the
yeah,
curse of the Oni is they change themselves into such warriors that she can't get out of that headspace now.
yeah. It's been about survival for Rook for so long that I don't know. Like she's lost. She's lost all the wars. Like,
Yeah,
is she even somebody that we want on Team Kemet if she can't win one of these
I
wars?
think it's useful having her perspective at times. But yeah, like this is that whole thing with Rook is yeah, she's like, oh, I'm here for Miss because we're trying something new and the old way doesn't work. But then she keeps advocating for the old way, and it's a bit like
Yeah,
you have to recognize that you're falling onto your old instincts, and the whole point of this is that we're not doing that.
yeah, and those old instincts
Don't
have
work.
lost
Yeah.
every time, Rook. Like, I hate to. She's clearly got some good
I mean,
ideas and
Verona
good
called her out on that
aspects, but yeah.
at the start of the arc, I think.
She's got
But
a
yeah,
0% hit rate, so maybe
but
don't, you know. Anyway.
But yeah, no, I do think it's interesting that yeah, like Eggs Megafire brings up like if this does suddenly work, what that means for Rook is actually a super interesting question.
Yeah.
Like yeah, people in the chat are saying she might just move to a new battlefield, but
Yeah. She's
yeah,
not equipped. I don't think she yet is ready to answer that question for
yeah,
herself.
yeah, true.
Um so Vice Versailles gave us basically an exhaustive list of everyone who's ever committed a crime and what Vice Versailles thinks their atonement should be.
Yeah, I I think some of this is tongue in cheek. I
Most of
certainly
them
hope
are
so.
jokes.
Like obviously we started with Cherry Pop, whose crime was being too adorable, and her atonement is being made to wrestle with an opossum until she succumbs to exhaustion. Very
Yes.
true. Very true.
It's interesting. A few of these, to me, Toad Swallow's response, Rook's response,
Yeah.
are both the crime is doing a bad thing, and the atonement that Vice Versa has listed is do that again, but for
For
us,
us.
for us
Yeah.
this time.
Which like jokes, but not just jokes. I think
Yeah, I
like
agree.
Vice Versa is delivering it in a very joke way, but like yeah. So Toadswallow's crime being history of arms dealing with dangerous others, and his atonement being made to deal arms with our dangerous others is a bit like tongue in cheek, obviously, but like does raise the point that like I mean this is what Verona's vision of the Undercity is all about, right? Like you take these bad things and you do them the good way.
Yeah,
And I guess that's what like Toadswallow is kind of trying to do.
yeah,
Like that is
yeah,
his
for
whole
sure.
thing.
That
Yeah.
is his atonement. Yeah,
And like with Rook, it
it's
was
kind of
her
the same
crime.
thing. Yeah,
Her crime is unethical warfare, and her atonement is unethical warfare in Muss's direction.
yeah. Yeah. Any other ones? Oh, there's one more that I want to pull out, which was Smunchlets, which I think is a new name in the discussion question circle. But I liked it. Who calls out Blunt Munch as like, hey, yeah, what's going on with Blunt Munch? Is Blunt Munch ready to be redeemed? Is Blunt Munch still just trapped upstairs in
I think
Matthew's house?
No,
Was
Rook
it?
had him
Okay.
for
Oh,
a
that's
while.
right.
Yeah.
What's Blunt Munch up to?
Yeah, yeah. I really like this insight because yeah, I'd forgotten about Blunt
Lunch
Munch.
Munch,
Um,
Lunch Bunch.
Great club munch a bunch. But yeah, like this is a good point. He is somebody who pretty comprehensively failed at the chance Kennett gave him.
Yep.
And the talks he had with John and stuff afterwards kind of gave us the vibes that he probably wasn't going to get any better.
He didn't have any desire to do
Yeah,
redemption.
so
Yeah.
it's a good answer.
So yeah, yeah, it is a good answer, and I really do think Blunt Munch is a great case for, okay, well, how many, like, what's our next chance that we are offering to Blunt Munch? Because effectively he's locked in prison right now if he's still with Rook, right? He's locked in a box, and maybe Rook will let him out to form a Suicide Squad briefly, but then he's
Yeah.
going back inside. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe that's the answer. Maybe the answer to how do we redeem people like that is a Suicide Squad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because the moral of Suicide Squad is that
is
Amanda
that
Waller
works
was
out?
doing the
Yeah,
good
Amanda
thing.
Waller is the hero,
I mean,
and
Amanda
clearly,
Waller is a bit of a rook,
yeah,
actually.
yeah,
Those two
true.
aren't that different.
Oh my god, my cross fiction: Amanda Waller, ex Crooked Rook.
um, yeah, we had one last answer I wanted to call out from Propaganda Pagoda, who, as well as doing the obligatory Edith sucks bit, kind of brought up as they were talking about how Liz is in dire need of redemption. They mentioned like that we need to bring the witch hunters back too, because they're people who have like they're not cat at others, obviously, but they're
No,
like a lot of them were good people and they're just kind of misguided and like Propaganda Pagoda basically wrote a letter that they could write to the witch hunters, kind of explaining everything, and it
yeah,
was a very much like it's a good point, like getting them on side through explaining things to them, treating them right. Like I can see it.
yeah, definitely. I think that's what was so interesting about the witch hunters when they're around was, again, they're another example of Kenneth trying to decide when do we pull our punches and what is the society that we want to determine, and I don't think that's fully been answered. Like, the witch hunters' place in what's the witch hunters' place in Muss's plan? Kind of what it is at
Oh,
the
we did
moment,
hear
right?
that. I think somebody was working to re-establish
The
connections with them,
lighthouse
like Bristow
connection.
had.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But it's not. Again, it's like it doesn't feel especially sustainable, right?
no,
I don't think we have a solution in the Kennett way of doing things to what the witch hunters are, where they fit in.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. They're a weird gap that I just had stopped thinking about, but it's a good point. Like,
you know, if the Kennetys, maybe anonymously or whatever, sent this letter to the witch hunters, that's basically saying, "Hey, this practitioner Mussa is trying to take control of all of
mm,
Eastern Canada. Um, you know, good luck.
yeah.
Get on it."
I don't know because
Do you think they would?
they work with big practitioners. I don't. I'm very confused about the witch hunter, like the lighthouse as an
Yeah,
organization,
yeah.
because we saw even within the teams of witch hunters, some were very specifically anti non-humans.
Mm,
Like I think that was like Clint, who was very like he just didn't like anyone who wasn't a human.
yeah,
Versus like Leanne, I think was the mum who was actually quite like she was the one who talked to Miss and
yeah,
seemed pretty chill.
yeah.
The fact that the organization sides with people like Massa kind of makes me think that Samaniego, or whoever the guy was who's in charge of it, is like the sort who would buy this bullshit about Massa's piece that
Mm,
Elizabeth was spouting all
mm,
this week.
mm.
Um,
So maybe let's not get them involved because they might
yeah,
not be on our side.
exactly. I feel like Massa would be able to spin it as like, well, if it's all lordships, then we'll have practitioners who are aware of all the monsters, and then it's really going to come down to there's that one subsection of the witch hunters who are aware that the real monsters were the practitioners.
Yeah. What was the
And
one who had the good sense of smell? He was the one to
Harris,
Harris. He was the one that was like, I think he would be able to tell that this was
yeah,
fucked up,
he
but
died,
he
didn't
died
he?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Like there was a subset of the witch hunters who are aware that practitioners were the real problem,
yeah,
but given that they work with people like Bristow, I don't think they're the ones on top.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. Lots of good discussion question answers.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff in there.
Should we talk about our new
Our new
discussion
discussion
question?
question, yes. The
Yeah.
new discussion question is a fun one. If you enjoy playing The Sims, this question I think will be right up your alley. And
Yeah.
the question is, what sort of conveniences would you add to your domain?
Yeah, it's just sort of inspired by last week, how
Yep.
much we just enjoyed seeing Verona and her
How
domain.
fun Verona's domain
It
was.
got me thinking about what I'd put in my domain,
Yeah.
and I'm interested to hear from other people too.
Do you have any, what stuff do you think you'd put in your domain, Elliot?
I'd want to be able to breathe underwater.
Interesting. It's just in your domain? What,
Well,
like when you're
no,
having a
I guess
bath, or like where?
well, I want to sleep underwater.
Sleep
That was just
underwater.
that was my first thought when Verona was like talking about how comfy her bed was. I was like, oh
Mm.
shit, in my domain, can I sleep underwater? Because I want to do that.
Interesting. Is that, where does that come from? That desire?
I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out like what's the psychological backstory to the desire to sleep underwater. Because obviously, I know you have done a lot of swimming in your lifetime.
Yeah, I used to take naps floating on the water when I used to teach swimming, like between
Huh.
classes, obviously, not while the kids were swimming, but like if I had a break, I'd sometimes just float and take a little nap, and that was really comfy. So maybe it's that.
On the water,
Yeah.
and that was fine. Did you ever wake up upside down any times by
No,
mistake?
no, very occasionally, like somebody would hop in the water and it would create waves, so like bits of water would go up your nose, and that was like a rude awakening. But
Huh. I
yeah,
think it would be nice sleeping underwater.
yeah, it's like the
Well,
whole thing of like the so no what like
a sensory
sensual,
deprivation
yeah,
tank.
yeah.
Essential deprivation
I knew that
tank.
wasn't right, but that was what was in my head.
Yeah, yeah. No, interesting. Um, I like that. I like that.
Yeah, extreme waterbed. That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Because I can picture like floating on kind of a pool armchair inflatable thing and falling asleep on it. It's like quite relaxing.
Yeah, but like the whole thing about being able to breathe underwater is then I could do it, but not have to worry about getting the water up my nose. Basically,
Yeah.
like
So
I
you'd
can
still
just.
be on the surface. You just wouldn't be as
I
worried
guess
about.
naturally, I assume I'm gonna float. I suppose the magic I can make myself not float, and then I can just sleep.
But would you want to be underwater or would you want to be on the surface?
I think it'd be cool to be under the water.
But I feel like it wouldn't be as relaxing, you know?
Well, once you've got the ability to breathe under there, it would
Yeah,
be.
maybe.
And then
Maybe.
it's just like, well, I guess that's just zero G. I think I've just created a weird way to invent zero G sleeping.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like the other option would just be to turn off gravity. I don't know which would be cheaper.
Cheaper. Do I get an anti-gravity machine
Yeah, I just
installed?
ask the spirits.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
is it going to be easier for me to breathe underwater
Shop
or turn
around for
off
a few
gravity?
different spirit contractors.
Yeah,
See who gives you
exactly.
the best bargain.
What about you? What's the first thing you'd put in your domain?
I feel
for?
like all the things I would put are pretty like just like mundane improvements. You know what I mean? Like
I
I
mean, I
want.
thought that's what I was doing, but
I feel like breathing underwater is slightly less mundane, but I'm talking things like you know the ability to automate chores or like have
Mm.
PowerPoints move around to wherever I
Yeah,
want them. You know what I mean?
yeah. Fuck, I need a PowerPoint. It just like appears on
Yeah,
the wall.
exactly.
Thank you.
Or
Yeah,
yeah, like I'll do the dishes and I'll put them here, and then House, can you just kind of pop them into the
yeah.
drawer when they're dry in 2 hours? Or I've got to run out to the shops. House, in 20 minutes when the oven's finished cooking the garlic bread, can you turn it off? Like
Yeah,
it would
yeah,
all
true.
be stuff that I could probably achieve nowadays with like a fucking Google Home or something, but I don't want to have the hassle of
Yeah.
setting it up.
I mean, that's the thing, even with a domain, right? Like that power kind of has to come from somewhere. Like you
Yeah.
need to be maintaining your domain. So you need a quote unquote income, I guess, to
Yeah,
fund it. But
well, I'd
yeah.
be going around and murdering people to
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
gather their power. Of course, I mean that was assumed.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Makes sense.
No, yeah, I think it would just be basically chore automation. That's really what I
Yeah,
do.
there'd definitely be a lot of that. Like Verona talked about how, like, she had an alchemy kit quickly whip up coffee for her and stuff.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
there'd be
yeah.
a lot of things like that. Like, yeah, you just sort of walk into the kitchen, there's already like a nice cold glass of water or something.
Yeah,
Like lots of
perfect.
those little things.
Yes. Oh
Yeah.
god. So we have a bunch of. We keep quite a lot of. I like drinking cold water, right? So we'll
Yeah.
have like 6 or 7, 1.5, 2 liter, whatever bottles of water that I will have to go around and fill up all the time.
Yeah, same.
If Casita could automatically do those for me, that would be the dream.
I understand that reference now. I
Yeah,
have
yeah,
since
nice.
seen Encanto
Good on
twice, actually.
Twice.
Yeah. Well, I watched it by myself, and then I got the rest of my family to watch it with me
Good
because
on
it
you.
was good.
Yeah.
I really liked it.
Yeah, Casita.
Go watch Encanto.
Casita is the best character for sure.
Way undervalued.
So
you
undervalued.
weren't kidding. Yeah.
Clearly, the most important gift that family has been given is a sentient house.
And yeah, it kind of seems like Mirabelle's the only one who gives a shit about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You know what? I think the Madrigal family might have some problems to tie us back into problematic practitioner society, which is effectively what Encanto is about. Anywho, I guess that's the end of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that discussion question about
Oh yeah.
about what amenities you would want in your domain. Feel free to leave your answer to that in the discussion threads. We'll get back to that in a fortnight, and we can go from there.
Yeah. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter. That's where we updated stuff like we're doing a video thing today,
Yeah.
or
Here we are. Hello.
yeah. I think we'll be posting memes again. We took a quick hiatus because we were too busy
break, yeah.
doing this,
But we've been sending each other some like, oh, this would make a good pale meme.
Yeah,
so we got to compile those.
They'll come back. Yeah. Yeah, and don't forget to stop by the Doof Media website, doofmedia.com, so you can find out about all the other great Doof shows. I think, Pale in Comparison is about to round out Arc 6,
Mm.
which means they're about to enter Arc 7, so it's a great time to catch up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, if you like the stuff that we do here at the Duff Media Network, you can support us at patreon.com/Duff Media. For those of us who are here live, all of the stuff that we are doing today is empowered by the fact that we have a Patreon. I
Yeah,
mean, like,
yeah.
it really gives us the ability to, like, we have our microphones and everything. It's not like we need any complex setup. So basically, all the money that we get from the Patreon goes into
Yeah.
doing fun stuff for the community.
All the dumb props we're about to pull out are
Yeah.
coming from Patreon funds. Yeah.
Yeah, and that we like the ability to do that. So if you want us to do more of that kind of stuff, and this is not just dumb stuff, but it's also contests and
Yeah.
organizing things like charity streams and making sure we can like pay artists to make those streams look nice and all that stuff, then yeah, become a patron, and that empowers us to do those cool things.
Yeah. And don't forget to stop by Wildbow's Patreon, patreon.com/Wildbow. I hear that Masters offered Wildbow a contract to own his writing. So, he's either going to go on the Master side or we got to Patreon him to keep him from turning into an evil practitioner.
Yeah, Wabo has a lot of travel to do, so he needs to be able to flip a lot of coins to go around places, and those coins got to come from somewhere.
Cool.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.